Cravers. So here we are with a brand new year after a 2020 we would just like to sort of forget about. But as tradition shows on most YouTube channels, we have to go and dive through the last 12 months and find the good, the bad, and just the plain disappointing. Really, we have to do it. It's like in an unwritten rule somewhere, or we'll be cursed with another YouTube rewind that has us all gathering around a fireplace. Also, I'd like to point out that these are my own opinions, so please take this as not as a definitive way of 2020. This is what I feel are the good, the bad, and the most disappointing points of gaming this year. Let's move on. Whoa, yeah, awesome, brilliant. Yeah, brilliant. So, to start us off, let's begin with a good point, with the three-part series of Tell Me Why from Don't Nod. The story-driven game that stars siblings Alison and Taylor as they meet back up at their old family home as they get set to sell it. But while they're there, they experience moments of their past that led to their mother's death. So, why did I put this in my top 5? Well, one thing I really appreciate is really good storytelling. And Don't Nod, I know, are some of the top storytellers that bring up talking points that we barely think of that much. This one, of course, being transgender issues. Tell Me Why picked up on some great points. And in the end of each part, it just left me guessing what was going to happen next. So that is why Tell Me Why is number 5 in our good list. So, moving on from the good to the bad, and this one is more of a bit of nitpicky thing for me than anything, and that's why it's number 5 in the bad list. And it is Super Mario 3D All-Stars Limited Run. Now, first of all, the game is great. You get 2 great Mario games and Sunshine in one package. But the issue is that the game is on a limited run. It will only be available until March, and then it's gone forever on digital platforms. I mean, the physical version will still be around, but still, that's not the point. The public wanted this game, and hopefully Nintendo will change their mind, but I'm going to be honest, I doubt that's going to happen. It's alright, I guess. Now, this is another one of our own problems. So both me and Matt have started a series for a few years now, where we try and team up together on some of the more known co-op games. And in 2019, we had a great laugh with Man of Medan, to the point that we tried again to get more of the cast to survive. So it was no doubt that we was going to go and do the same thing with the next game in the Dark Pictures anthology, Little Hope. Now, it is a good game. Again, a good story, but the one thing that really let it majorly down is the crash. So, to this point, we still haven't been able to get it to work again. And again, we both want to finish the story, but when you have something that breaks the game like we ran into, of course it's going to be a disappointment to us. Yeah! Oh, cool! Yeah, brilliant! This is awesome! Go! Woo! So, back to the good, and this time it was a surprise hit that came out this year in the form of spooky ghost investigator game, Phasmophobia. The indie game that has you and up to 3 of your friends go and explore different types of creepy buildings as you try and find and figure out just what type of ghost you're dealing with before the ghost finds you. So, why is it here? Well, as someone who isn't a big fan of horror games, that was something absolutely different that stood out for us during this year's Nights of Horror, as it ended up more of how you picked on your friends than actually doing the task at hand. Also, just a warning, never do the dreaded asylum. It's just too big, even with 4 people. For crying out loud, we ended up wandering around for half an hour. You can see it in the video. That was unedited. It was half an hour and Doc died. Well done. That's the game. But still, a really good game. Go play it. It's fun. A lot of fun. Boo! So, for the 4th worst thing 2020 had to give us, I felt like these 2 things needed to be together, and that is the next gen fiascos. So let's first start with the PlayStation 5. So with both consoles, the little bit of issue was that the will they, won't they, when they reveal of any information for the console itself. But PlayStation's worst point has to be how it handled their pre-orders. With Xbox, they at least gave us a set date and that the pre-orders will be open at a set time. And yes, there was a few issues with them, but nowhere near as bad as it had with the PlayStation, who opened up the pre-orders the next day with no order at all, and no retailer actually knowing how many they would actually be getting on the day. Still, it wasn't just PlayStation that let us down. Xbox may have done one of the biggest faux pas out of the two consoles. When a console releases, at least have exclusives for your console, not games that also are available to play on previous gen. Well, with the Medium and Halo Infinite releasing this year, let's hope things get better for them. I mean, it could have been worse. So, look, I am a big fan of Crash Bandicoot, with the Insane Trilogy being one of my favourite games of 2018. So, when we was told that Crash will be back with a continuation from the original three titles, we felt that this is great, what can go wrong? Well, nothing really did, but then again, there was nothing really that stood out either. You got the same stuff you got from the original three titles, with nothing new to the game. Now, it could be that they were being careful, but at the same time, maybe a better twist would have not gone amiss that made this game very forgettable. Yeah! Oh, brilliant. Go ahead. Yes. Next in the good books is a game that came free with the PlayStation 5. So when you first see Astro's Playroom, you would think that this is just a technical demo for the DualSense controller. Which, yes, it is. There is not a way around it. That is what the game was designed to do. But then, again, this didn't stop the team at Sony to think of just how can we make this fun? Which they succeeded in doing. Not only did I get hooked on to this game itself, but even after 100%ing the game, I still keep it in my installed games as it's a great way to show others what a PlayStation 5 can do. Plus, more importantly, for those who grew up on Sony's consoles, it's a great blast from the past in its museum, showing off everything PlayStation hardware had to offer. And when I mean everything, I mean everything that was officially released by Sony, including the stuff for the PSP. Boo! You suck! Get off the stage! So when we was told that the Xbox had acquired Ninja Theory into its Xbox Game Studio family, we were wondering just what would they have planned with the company that introduced us to games like Hellblade and Heavenly Sword. Unfortunately, it turned out it was a bad clone of a game that had been out for over 4 years. Now, okay, look, the game is free to play on Games Pass. But then again, no one was asking for a new online Team v Team game, as a lot of us already got off fill with Overwatch. It was a game that was made for a market that just didn't exist in 2020. I mean, there's hopefully a next time. Just keep at it. Moving on, we have Ubisoft's modern twist to action RPGs in the form of Watch Dogs Legion. Now, this is a game that had to be pushed back a few times, and the more we saw of the game, it felt like they may have been promising more than they could deliver. And unfortunately, we were right. Now, this game is not bad. It is fun that you have the ability to make friends with anyone in London and add them to your team. But, unfortunately, it seems that the gameplay had to take a bit of a blow, as after so long, everything just felt the same. Still, it's worth picking up when it is on sale, but apart from that, you might as well just go and stick with Valhalla. Yeah! Woo! Yes! I have been debating with myself between the top spot and second, as both these games have entertained us in different ways this year. But after much arguing with myself, I had decided that nostalgia had to take second place this time round, putting a game that so many of us have been asking for to be remastered since we was teased with it on a PlayStation 3 technical demo. Final Fantasy VII Remake just missing out of that top spot, unfortunately. Look, as a fan of Final Fantasy series, I was introduced to the series with the original Final Fantasy VII when I was a tiny GD. And a lot of us, when we was told that this was being remade for the PlayStation 4, we did kind of worry a little, as unfortunately during that time, remakes had been a bit of a hit or miss unfortunately. But Final Fantasy VII Remake had given us that nostalgia feeling that with some added extras to the game as well. Plus, the story has still not been finished yet. Let's hope that the next part of the game brings us even more joy whenever that is released. Boo! Go away! God's sake, this is just awful. Stop! Unfortunately, it seems like a second game for the Xbox Game Studios in the bad list, as this time it's the turn of Battletoads, a game originally released in the early 90s and known for its high level of difficulty. It had been remade for the 21st century, but unfortunately it seems that the game was stuck in its ways not for the right reasons, as its humour just seemed to run a bit flat, the story was lacking, and the gameplay just felt so repetitive. Also, the one thing that Battletoads needed was that it was also not that difficult. Just so many missed opportunities for what could have been a great game. Come on, there's plenty more fish in the sea. Sort of. So, when we were shown that an Avengers game was being created by Square Enix, a lot of us was rightfully excited about this, as it was being created by the same team that brought Lara Croft back into the spotlight. But as we saw more and more of the game, we started to get a little bit worried. And when it finally released, it didn't help us out anymore. Now, the game is brilliant, and if it didn't have the Marvel's trademark on it, it would be a great superhero game. But in the end, that game just ended up feeling too much like any other looter shooter that we had already gotten sick of after the disaster of last year in the name of Anthem. Still, it's a good game, it's just really, really bad timing for when it's been released. So, before we look at what we thought was the worst and most disappointing, and of course the best of 2020, here are just a few honourable mentions that unfortunately didn't make the list. First of all, Among Us. Now, this game was not added as the game actually originally came out in 2018. It's just that it got really popular this year. I mean, if it wasn't for that reason, it would easily have got #1 spot because it has definitely been the great game of this year. Also, next, Craig meme. It was either him or the Xbox fridge. We had a choice between the two, and unfortunately, I'm going with Craig. Next, it's gaming communities in general. Look, in the end, it was what brought us all together. It was the art of gameplay, and especially me being part of a gaming community with Crave the Game, it has been a great thing that has been needed so much for this year. And of course, talking about this year, I want to just say Jeff Keighley, man. He brought us the summer of gaming with the Summer Games Fest. Not just him, but his whole team. It brought us something that we needed, and that was the gathering of any game information, any game news, any game event that happened in one nice little spot. And hopefully we'll see it again next year. Or this year. It'll be this year now. Sorry, we're filming this in 2020. Also, I've got a dishonorable mention as well. I want to mention about scalpers, for crying out loud. All the stories we saw when the PlayStation 5 and the Xbox Series X and S came out, of them having them all stacked up. Dude, no excuse. You guys are just dicks. Get over it. Seriously, why do we even try anymore? This sucks. This game literally sucks. So, and again, at #1 is another WWE game. After last year's disaster of 2K20, as a wrestling fan, it was great to find out that 2K was going back to the drawing board with the series itself. Unfortunately, being 2K and WWE, they couldn't miss out on not releasing something this year. So we had the release of WWE Battlegrounds, a game that was still priced around £40 that had so much of it locked behind either a paywall or having you play stupid amounts of hours to unlock. Also, its gameplay was just so limited and so bland. Something you don't expect from a wrestling game itself. Have more than just a couple of moves. You're a wrestling game. Honestly, you should just avoid this game at all costs. And 2K, really just have a break. After 2 disastrous years in wrestling games in a row, I know if we did this last year, 2K20 would have took the top spot there as well. Look, we would rather you not have a game out this year than go for a third. Seriously, have a break. Look, I'm not mad, I'm just disappointed. So, as our most disappointing game of 2020, it has to be one game and one game only, and that is Cyberpunk 2077. So, look, this could have easily been in the worst game list. After all, this is the only game out of all the lists that had not only been pulled temporarily from digital stores, had CD Projekt Red publicly apologise for how bad the game was graphically, but also the game had been delayed multiple times. So why is it not in the worst list? Well, it's simply enough that a lot of these issues seem to be with the last generation of consoles. Look, I ended up playing this game on the PlayStation 5, where everything just seems to run smoothly. Now, this is no way a reason for Cyberpunk 2077 to get off the hook for this. But for a game that has had so much time working out any issues that came up for it, the one thing they should have done was make sure that the game could at least run on the consoles it was going to come out for. Honestly, most of us would have just been happy for them to just skip the last generation of consoles and made it a console seller it still could easily be. So like I said, Cyberpunk 2077, hopefully they'll get it fixed. We've got the optimized patch coming for the next gen consoles. Look, knowing CD Projekt Red, they will work tirelessly to make this work. And I have so much confidence that they will. Unfortunately, I do not see it working for last gen. So unfortunately, if you want to play this game good, unfortunately you will have to get that next gen console, which makes it very disappointing. Yeah! Oh, brilliant! Go ahead! Yes! Yes! Now, as the game of 2020, like we said, we had a hard choice between this game and Final Fantasy VII. But just what the game did for a year that we had to stay apart, it gave so many of us that way to escape it all. And that is, of course, Animal Crossing New Horizon. It just let us go out with our friends without leaving our seat, and let us enjoy those moments of everyday's usually mundane tasks like gardening and cleaning up an island in real time. And it's just that everything got helped when everything got flipped upside down. So it's easily enough. Animal Crossing is highly deserving of this year's #1 spot of 2020, just for how it has helped in a time we was so apart. Thank you. So, here we are with the good, the bad, and just the plain disappointing of 2020. Now, look, if you enjoyed this, please like, comment, and subscribe to us here at Crave Your Game. And you know what? We are thinking about doing this as a monthly thing, doing a one good, one bad, and one disappointing point of each month. If you think that is a good idea, please let us know. And if not, then hopefully you'll have a happy new year to you all, and we'll see you next time. Goodbye, everybody.